Hi everyone, welcome to this DevOps chat. I'm really delighted to have Miska from Container with us, who is going to be on one of the panel discussions at Container World later this month. Hi Miska, thanks for joining us.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Perhaps before we start talking about containers and DevOps, it'd be really interesting to hear a bit about your background and what you've worked on in the past and also what you're doing currently.
Yeah, sure. Well, my own background, I have been running my own companies, I think since '99, running several startups, doing some wireless link technologies for telcos in the early 2000s, and then after that doing a mesh networking protocol stacks, and then after that working for one of the big enterprises, well, now back in the startup world again, and working with containers. So yeah, it's been always kind of focused on more or less on the kind of starting something new and starting something kind of very interesting in the market.
I was going to say, when you list those kinds of technologies and areas you've worked in, that all sounds quite cutting edge, you know, very much at the modern end of what technology is doing at the time.
Yeah, I kind of enjoy being in a place where I could potentially kind of change the world, and I really enjoy this type of new bleeding edge technologies.
Yeah. And so your current company is Container. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how long you've been in existence and what you're focusing on.
Yeah, so we started in early 2015. Open source platform for orchestrating and basically running Docker containers in production, and we have been trying to make it as easy as possible for developers. So basically creating this full stack solution so that if organization wants to start running containers in production, they don't need to look for any other pieces of technology. So it's all kind of contained in our solution. So yeah, we have been doing that for now, what is it, almost 2 years, more than 2 years now. And yeah, it's been really great. And now we are having offices in Helsinki. A lot of the R&D is done in Finland, and we are also having offices in US. So basically traveling back and forth and trying to spread the word about the benefits of containers, and so it's very exciting.
So I mean, that sort of leads nicely on to perhaps a first point that we can talk about, which is containers have, I would say, I mean, within Worldline and Atos, people were talking about them maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but I would say my feeling is it's only really the last year that it seems it's incredible, or maybe last 2 years, that there's a lot of talk about containers and what they can do. So what's in terms of people talking about it, what's your perception of how that the hype or the awareness has increased over the last few years?
Yeah, I think the bubble it's just, you know, amazing at the moment. I'm also organizer of several meetup groups here. One of them being Docker Helsinki meetup group. So we have maybe 1,000 DevOps guys there in this meetup group, and we are having these meetups and talking about Docker and also other type of things like CI/CD pipelines and whatever. And yeah, that's true that if I ask in many of those meetups, I ask the people to raise their hand if they are actually running these Docker containers in production. So actually there are not so many hands coming up. So I think there is a huge amount of interest, and this is very exciting topic, but actually the number of organizations who have been getting so far that they are actually running some workloads in production. So yeah, I think that's still relatively small number of organizations. So
there's a high amount of interest at the moment, but a much smaller number of people actually using it for something real, rather than say just a test project.
Yeah, and of course there are many reasons for that, and of course from my company point of view, of course we are trying to ease the adoption of container organizations. So, but naturally, I think that as an industry, I think we could even do maybe more to help help people to adopt containers in their daily life and how they do things.
So I mean that's a great point. So what do you, given that there's such a high interest, what do you think are the challenges or the blockers that are stopping people actually using the technology in a real world environment?
I think that well, first of all, it might be quite confusing. So it's a basically jungle of technologies at the moment. So I would argue that we should maybe focus more on talking about solutions rather than these individual pieces of technology. So I think this movement of containers, it's like an Apollo program, It's like, it's so many different kind of, let's say, research laboratories are working on different parts of interesting technologies. And in the media, we are very much talking about these individual pieces of technologies. But we need to kind of make it commercial, more commercial. Mm-hmm. Like from the Apollo program, it was not directly mean that they are commercially kind of viable, those pieces.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a great point, because I remember Jeff Atwood once saying this about open source generally, that, see, if you're used to developing on a Microsoft stack, you're used to kind of, Microsoft will tell you the best way to do everything, whereas the open source way is there are 1,000 different ways, and you have to figure out which bits you should slot together to make it work. So is that something are we still in that stage with containers?
Yeah, I think so, very much so. And but of course I understand that from a lot of the discussion happening online and in the media is also driven by individuals who are very deep into technology, and of course these people, they are very excited about the technology and they love to talk about technology. I would say that organizations, they don't want to put together, enterprises don't want to put together hundreds of different pieces of technologies to make up a solution. So they actually want to get the solution. So like if you want to buy yourself a car, so would you like to put it together, getting a gearbox and, engine and exhaust pipes and everything? No, actually,
I wouldn't.
So I think this similar type of analogy in here that in the end, I believe that discussion will be geared more towards the actual solutions rather than the pieces of technology that make up the solution.
So more about the benefits it can bring, as I suppose, I guess that's an opportunity, isn't it, for certain technology providers like your company, but also other companies, to provide that, that packaged up sort of all out of the box solution that lets you use containers in a useful way to actually add some value. So do you see other challenges in terms of, say, enterprises that have a large existing infrastructure or set of applications? What are there challenges for them to try and adopt containerization?
Well, of course, the traditional problem with the enterprises is that I think quite a lot of these container solutions nowadays, they are targeted for the types of people who are kind of some DevOps, kind of superhumans.
Right.
They are kind of these self-contained 7-man cells that can basically, they can do everything in the world by themselves. But actually, the reality in the enterprise world is that we still have ops teams, we have, developers, and the needs of those people are totally, different. And then if you think about from the CIO point of view, so he's there sitting by his desks, and he's meeting with his ops team people, and of course they will see containers being able to provide more, maybe better utilization of the existing infrastructure and the resources. Maybe they are looking containers to kind of unify or provide a unified platform for some third-party software suppliers, because often the big enterprises, they have huge number of software suppliers, and they will see containers being kind of nice way to force them to unify the way how they deliver this. So okay, ops teams want that, and then maybe the development and the project organizations, maybe they want just to have this more agility and more kind of faster rollouts of new projects and stuff like that with containers. So I think the different types of needs are something that the CIO is just thinking that, okay, what type of platform I should choose. And I think they are a little bit struggling then if they are looking at these slides that actually shows them these 100 different pieces of technology. And then they are like, oh my God, do I need to choose from this list something? And what should I actually now choose from this list to kind of fulfill my needs? So I think that's another maybe issue in there, that organizations, enterprises today, they are not these fully kind of DevOps self-sustained.
And it's a very good point, because I think, so it's a question I'd like to ask you really. Obviously, a big part of the DevOps philosophy is this idea of not having the silos, not having, I code something and then I throw it over the wall to someone who will operate it in production. Now, I think just what you've described there, sometimes we're seeing containers as a little bit the box that you will put something in before you throw it over the wall. And I'm never quite sure whether that is a good thing or not. Does that not keep the silos and then the container becomes almost the contract between the silos? Or, so I don't know, what do you see there? Do you think it does encourage closer collaboration, or does it actually make the wall between them stronger?
I think the way, if you want to maintain this wall, so then I think actually some platform as a service type of product works best for that organization, because there is actually this platform that can be managed by the operations team, and then actually software developers just start doing software and they will get the benefits like agility and everything. And actually under the hood there might be, you know, usage of container technologies, but it's not kind of the main feature of this whole solution. And that's what I'm kind of trying to say, that I think people should kind of not get too attached to certain technology, but just, you know, look for the right solution for what they're looking for. So in most cases, I would argue that in the future, many of the solutions that are out there today will be based on containers, but it might be that it's not the kind of main thing. The container, the organizations, they might have different kind of main purposes of having these solutions.
And you see that, so that's almost exactly something that we recently published a white paper, and it's you've almost said exactly one of the things we said, which is that some of this is about treating teams as, thinking of teams as providing a service to other teams rather than providing a person or as you say, rather than providing a server or a bit of hardware or even a container, providing a service. And that then allows a team using that service to plan and build their software in a way that works together with them correctly. So it's really interesting to hear you make that independent observation. And I think as well that helps with scale, because the reality is you can't have a team of 1,000 people. You've got to have some way of keeping your teams at a manageable size. And by getting them all to focus on a particular component or a particular part of the system, but treating it as a microservice or a platform as a service or infrastructure as a service that someone else consumes, is the way you can make DevOps work at scale. So that's really interesting. I mean, because obviously you work with people from, you know, many different companies, I'd be interested to know if you have a top tip for how organizations or people can take the first steps with using containers.
Yeah, I would say that basically don't trust anything that the vendors are saying. Because I think in the end you need to try out. So I think the best investment you can do at the moment is that you will little bit spend time and resources just to test them yourself out, different platforms, because on a paper, basically everything looks the same, or on a paper, something might look super nice or something like that. But the reality might be not, as rosy as it might first look. So just, trying it out, it doesn't take too much time to figure out if this is something that you actually want to, dive deep. And So I think often, at least at the current stage of technology, if you just try to find out the best platform by just reading some papers, so most likely you will not find the best solution for your organization. So I think the only way is really to try out.
And that's great advice. And I know one team within Worldline had exactly this challenge, and they were looking at moving to some cloud-based infrastructure. And they selected a provider initially by looking at, as you say, looking at the brochure, looking at what they were saying. But in the end, even though that on paper looked like the best option, they then tried another one, and that was a better fit. And they would never have known that without the... So I suppose before making a big commitment to one provider, you really need to get some hands-on practical experience. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I suppose just before we finish off, do you have any predictions or thoughts on the future of all this? What's next in containers? What's the next big change we'll see?
Well, of course, this whole technology is evolving still quite a lot. I think there is some fundamental kind of issues that still needs to be addressed with containers. I think one of the biggest missing piece in this whole puzzle is still to have the kind of meaningful way to handle those data volumes that are attached to those containers. Because I'm a strong supporter of the idea that containers should be usable also for running something like databases. And now if you think about the database, so it needs to have some kind of data volumes also attached. And if the containers, they are almost like floating. So because containers, they can be, killed and then started again somewhere else. Yeah. So now these data volumes also need to be very elastic and moving together. And that's something that I'm still yet to see kind of good enough solutions. So I'm expecting a lot of activity in that front. And I think also Docker, they acquired a company also focusing on this area. And there is also some other activity by other parties trying to solve this problem. In the long term, I believe everything will be in containers. I think, everybody who is using Apple computers, so we know that basically all the software is already kind of a container. So they are these packages that you will install and then you will run, and when you uninstall it, so then it's completely gone. So I think that also happening to the desktop side, these containers. So actually all our software is basically, even desktop software will be packaged as containers. And that's a great way to distribute software. So actually one way I'm also seeing happening in the future is that these containers, and actually together with some lightweight container engine, so we are able to distribute software more easily, and it's going to be quite interesting.
So you think wider adoption of containers used for pretty much all distribution of software, but also technically solving that challenge of what to do with the persistent data, because as you say, it's fine for the code, isn't it? That can be, you can kill that and start it up again, but you still everything you've stored in the database still needs to be there. Okay, really interesting. So thank you so much, Miska. It's been a pleasure talking to you. As always, I learn a ton every time I speak to someone before a DevOps chat. So thanks so much for that. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing you online in a few days for the Twitter chat itself. And also hope you enjoy your panel session at Container World later this month.
Yeah, thanks. It was a pleasure. All right.